Hey everyone, it's Michelle and Dave, and we are on day 27 of our 30-day video vlog challenge. We are on the home stretch.
Yeah, we are.
So what I wanted to do today was something very special to me, was to give a super sweet shout out to my dad. Because my dad is 80 today. 80 years old and still rocking it.
Yes, he is.
And an inspiration to me in so many ways, especially at being 80. I'm like, wow, blown away. So Dad, I love you and happy birthday. And I want to share you a little bit of my story about that. Most people don't know that I am actually adopted, halfway adopted. My mom is my mom. And will always be my mom. Yeah, and she birthed
biological.
me. Yes, she's my biological mom, Jan Kramer. And a wonderful mom. And for whatever reason, my biological dad chose not to stick around in our lives. Many years ago, and so I really did not know him at all, and or ever had met him. But there was a man named Bob Kramer who fell in love with my mom and married her, and I guess he fell in love with me too, because it was his idea. He's like, I need to adopt her. She's going to be my daughter, and so that was when I was probably 4 years old.
And it was a huge thing for you, right?
It was a huge thing.
Someone picked you. They chose you.
Yeah, he chose me.
Their daughter.
So I know. It's like, oh, so thank you, Dad, for choosing me and loving me and to be your daughter. I know it all hasn't been perfect, and we both had our own journeys for sure in life. And but I think what I've really enjoyed as an adult in our relationship together is what you do. You are such a giver to people. In your communities and in the areas that you live is blown me away. From you being the Easter Bunny or playing Santa Claus or building a park where there was no playground for children, and
amazing giver.
You would go when you moved to Missouri. There was no playground in your town in Missouri, so you drove several hours and coordinated to get all this playground equipment for the kids to have a playground in your own community there in Armstrong, Missouri. And I'm like, wow. And you're involved in running for office. I'm like he was in his late 70s running for office. I'm like, who does that? My dad. That's who does it. And if anybody ever needs anything, they know to call you. And so you have been such a really amazing inspiration to me and to us, and to keep living your life and not retiring. Like, who needs to retire? Not my dad. So I think you're going to live to be 150 the way you're going. So, but I want to tell you, I love you, and thank you for being my dad and choosing me. And you mean the world to me in so many ways. And I wish we were closer in physical proximity, and we will be soon. So, mwah, big hug and kiss. And there's a really, I want to share an interesting piece of my journey and my own healing work. And my dad was a powerful piece of that in my healing journey. And I think when kids are adopted, there is always that wondering, at least in my experience, of who your biological parents are and so forth. And I did have those natural wonderings and wanted to know. And there was an occurrence that I didn't realize happened. I was probably 7 or 8 years old. And I made up a story, and not a good story, about my adopted dad, Bob, and who's my dad. I made up a story about him, and that I didn't think I was that important to him because I wasn't his biological daughter. And so I've lived a lot of my life.
That happened because he was playing with his biological daughter.
And so I do have a sister. My mom and my dad actually had another child who is my sister. Her name is Rebecca. And she was his biological daughter. And so we were playing in the living room one day, and I think he was on the floor playing with Rebecca, and she's probably 3 or maybe 4 years old. And I was probably 7. And I saw them playing, and I thought he didn't want to play with me, and that I was not as important to him because I was not his biological daughter.
And it wasn't based on
there's nothing really he did or he said. No. There was no message that he said.
But it was the story, and I think that's so important, is that we make up stories based upon the age our brain is at that time, and we make up these stories that we carry with us for years. And you carried that story for a long time until you had a conversation with your dad.
I did.
Tell me about that.
Well, and what I realized, I had this aha, was that I thought I didn't feel important because my biological dad didn't stick around. That I continued that story, that my adopted dad didn't really, care about me or think I was that important because of just the story I made up that I wasn't his biological daughter. And so I went through my whole life trying to feel important and to please others and try to make other people feel important. And so I'm like, wow, that was my aha. And so I was kind of at a weekend intensive doing some personal growth work. And one of the assignments was to call that person. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to call my dad.
Call my dad.
So I called my dad, and he answered. And I says, Dad, I need to tell you something or ask you something. And I made up this story, and I told him the story that I didn't feel like I was important to him. And he's like, what? I had no idea. No, it was my idea to adopt you. You have always been my daughter. And I love you. And he says, I've never seen you differently than only being my daughter, which blew me away. I'm like, really? Really, Dad? And that was so powerful and so healing, more so even for my love for him and our relationship and him doing his own, I think, work in his journey in his life. So it was just a gift to come out with that, with him, and be vulnerable with my dad and be honest.
And so from that, I mean, it taught you a lot, like to check in about our stories.
Right.
Like, maybe they're not true. Maybe our assumptions that we make are not true. And once we recognize we have them, number one, and number two, to check in to see if they're real or wrong or right or correct or honest or what really other people are thinking, we have the option of being able to eliminate them from our life. And from that point on, you were free from that story and the effects that it created.
Right. It was powerful. And it was a huge gift. And it's amazing how the stories that we can make up about an event. Yeah. And his story would happen there, or what my story was, like, wow. Yeah. So it was very enlightening and but it was very freeing to be able to call him and get the real truth and the facts of what really happened and occurred that day, as opposed
Thank you,
to
Bob, for being there and rescuing her heart in many ways, like.
And you had
the
no
original
no
day
idea
of adopting her, and then this story that you stood there and really rescued her heart again, letting her know how important she is. So thank you.
Thank you
for all of it. We love you.
We love you, and we have a little song for you. Ready?
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 Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dad, Mr. Bob. Happy birthday to you.
I love you, Dad. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Ready?
Yeah. Are we recording? Oh yeah, of course we are. Okay, sorry. It's like blah, blah, blah.
We're standing here for a reason. Put the camera together.
Okay. Just because it's fun.
Just 26 days into this.
Okay, we got it. Ready? Okay, do 26. 26?
Yes.
Did we do 26 this morning?
Stop it.
We did 26 earlier today.
Oh, 27.
Thank you.
Oh,
gotcha. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay, you can put that in the video. Okay?
Okay.
Super special day to me because today is.
Start over.
I know, because I know. I'm like, why did you do that? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Let's kiss you.